Good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Today is July 13th, 2022. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Here.
Mrs. Blankfeld? Mr. Rock?
Here.
Mrs. Wise? Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Cooney?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here. Is there a motion to excuse Mrs. Blankfeld and Mrs. Weiss?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Sachs, second by Mr. Gould. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Okay, the members are excused. We have 3 agenda items this evening. The first is letter A, motion to approve Planning Commission's recommendation of approval from July 7, 2022 regarding application from John Carroll University for traffic and parking presentation for site plan approval. I see Jeremiah Sweddle and others from John Carroll are here. Did you want to present again this evening? We do have, I think many of these council members were here at the last meeting, not necessarily everyone. Did you have anything you wanted to say to begin with?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jeremiah Sweddle. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Facility and Auxiliary Services at John Carroll University. We're very pleased to be here again tonight. We have Rick Ortmeyer, Principal of Boswick Design Partnership, and Jeff Levy, Principal and owner of Carroll Construction. And I wanted to take a minute before we get started. Mayor, we would like to do the traffic presentation again. We did update those numbers as requested. So that'll be a quick presentation and overview, kind of like what we did the other day. But I did want to take a moment and reflect on some of the things we heard last week about concerns about working outside of the hours of the ordinance from 8 to 4:30. And we have taken some measures with our CM, Carroll, and Jeff Levy, and I think we're headed in the right direction. And we're very serious about being good neighbors to the residents of the city of University Heights. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to invite Jeff up here to just kind of go over some of the action items that we're putting in place to make sure that we don't have another incident.
Okay, very good. Mr. Levy, you may approach. Please just state your name and repeat your title for the record, please.
Jeff Glebe. I'm with the Carroll Company. We're the construction managers out of John Carroll University. We're no stranger to working in the area in University Heights. We've actually been here for about 10 years. And I believe we've had a great working relationship with all of your inspectors, and the processes have always gone very well. It's been about 10 years, maybe a little less, when we did Murphy Hall, another dorm renovation, and it was at that time that the ordinances, we were first introduced to the ordinances and the hours. Again, if you know Murphy Hall, neighbors right across the street, and we did 2 additions, and we kind of took over the road, so to speak. And it was at that time that we became very conscientious of your hours, your ordinances, and weekend work, and or making noise or construction before 8 and then after 4:30. We then went on to do some other work at the University and Student Center, and most recently we finished up Dolan Hall. Dolan Hall may not have made so much noise because it was kind of in the center of the campus, and so you probably didn't see us coming and going as much as you would have on other projects. Ironically, that project finishes in June, and we move over to Pacelli Hall, which is another dorm renovation. And it's at that time that we introduce a new site contractor. Ironically, he's an alumni to John Carroll, and his firm is the firm that showed up early that morning and wasn't aware of the ordinances. We immediately, after talking to the university, put out an email from our office to all the subcontractors. All the other subcontractors have already worked on campus, they know of the ordinance, and we did a general reminder. I think with other activity coming up at the university that you've been talking with Jeremiah about, we thought it'd be good policy to remind maybe those contractors that are new to the area or maybe new with other contractors. And so we're having some signage made up, and we're going to put it on the gates. And this isn't the final. This will be something 3x5. We'll have 3 or 5 of these signs at different entrance points and around the neighborhood. And it simply says, we understand where we're working in University Heights, our relationship with John Carroll and John Carroll's relationship with the Carroll Company, and a reminder of the ordinance, stated, verse, and yes, we shortened it, which basically says no construction before the hours of and after the hours of. So we're going to post these around the site for the driver that shows up that isn't aware, if he didn't get the message from his company. So we're trying to take proactive moves since the incident occurred, and do what we can to continue to be a good neighbor to both the university and a client that we really enjoy working with. I'm available if anyone had any questions, or if you'd like to add anything. There you are. Jeremiah?
Well, thank you, Mr. Levy. Were there any questions at this time for Mr. Levy? Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. Thank you so much. That's very reassuring and very responsive to our residents' needs. Just a quick question. What if the message, there's a new person, and they don't abide by it, and it is irritating to the resident, and they reach out to someone like me. Who do we call? What do you recommend?
Yeah, so we were going to do, like you said, it's a proactive move. And like any proactive move, sometimes something happens. And so we will try to stay ahead of it. I would recommend that you continue with the way you've handled it, and that is through the university and then back through the Carroll Company so that we can manage it together. I do have full-time supervision on site. This is not a case on any of our projects where no one from Carroll is represented on site. Our full-time supervision, that's what he does. He directs deliveries. We actually have delivery logs and what time they're allowed to come. So there's a diligence process, and we'll try to stick with it. But I would recommend going back through the university and then to Carroll.
Thank you. Is it a question for the city? Is there someone we first call at the city? Or what do you recommend, Mayor Brennan?
I think one of the things we've done in the past, and we referenced this during the Planning Commission hearing, is we've entered into development agreements with the particular developer. And one thing we want to do in that agreement is establish a point of contact for these types of incidents. So it's clear amongst all the parties who the city would contact to address these issues, and that would be our initial step.
So contact the city who contacts... Yeah.
Yeah, residents should contact the city. I think another thing we've done in the past is, and it's been very effective on a much smaller scale, is we've had a meeting among the developer and construction company with neighbors. If perhaps we arranged that and put some parameters around it, at the point where you're about to begin putting shovels in the ground, that may be very helpful way of communicating all that information and answering questions directly, and may give you a bit of insight into what people are concerned about.
We have participated in that in other communities, more of an outreach with the neighborhood, and obviously it'd be led by John Carroll and their people, but we would welcome that and be supportive of the university.
Okay,
Often we'll present a logistics plan so that they could see it how we see it. And vice versa. We can understand their concerns.
It helps set the expectations and an understanding of what all is to commence and what all is involved. So I think that helps. I heard Mr. Gould.
Mayor, thank you. Mr. McConville, is that development agreement something that would be part of this approval?
No, this approval, and I don't want to steal your thunder, this approval relates to a parking plan, and I think the applicant will explain it. It's something that they want to implement now as part of staging, but they're going to be returning to this body with a full site plan that'll have a lot more information than the conceptual plan that's in this document, and it would be a contingency of the approval of that site plan that we enter into a development agreement. So after council's had the opportunity to vet that site plan, which we talked about in general terms at the Planning Commission level, we would enter into negotiation on the development agreement.
So two things I wanted to say. I mean, we have a fantastic relationship, and I have every belief that JCU has the interest of the community at heart in the entire plan, and including its execution and these specific things we're discussing. One of the things that I'm aware of is that sometimes when somebody comes to a city or comes to a university, they're not aware of the culture of that place. So you have someone that comes from a big state school and comes to your small private institution and then treats either students or parents in a certain way that you're just like, oh, we don't do that here. And it's like, yes, we do call people back very quickly. Yes, we do offer that extra service. Yes, we will go check on the dorm room of a kid who didn't answer their parents' call on Saturday, and on Sunday the parents calling already hoping that Jimmy's okay, right? We do that at a smaller place. And we have a culture like that of service to our community as well. And my concern would be that the conversations that you're having with, Krill and whoever their subcontractors are making sure that they understand the culture of the place, right? So if they're showing up loud on a morning time, our residents will be aware of that. They will call. They don't expect that. That's not part of our culture here, that we have people in the community doing big construction jobs and waking them up. And then the second part of that is just, you've had such great messaging with us, and I appreciate the conversations that you've had thus far. I think this is just part of, I really hope in terms of the engagement with a community meeting or something, because as a small community, I think the messaging and news gets out in a community about what's happening, and that's what happened here. And what I saw wasn't positive and wasn't at all the way I would want this amazing, very exciting project, in its entirety to be, expressed to the community. And already I've seen on our messaging boards and Facebook sites, JCU's coming in and they're closing all the businesses. What will our businesses do, here in University Heights? We're not going to have those anymore. And of course, publicly none of us are responding to any of that. I think it would be helpful if you would regain control of the messaging around this project, because it is exciting, it is transformative. I think it's exactly what University Heights needs, and I'd be excited for our residents to feel that as well. But that messaging really, as the developer and as the person doing this amazing project, that has to come from you. It's not appropriate for us to, take what you've provided and do that. So I would love to see that, Mayor and Mr. McConville, in your conversations in future, some type of engagement with the community in a community meeting. If there is, 24/7, or not 24/7, but if there's full-time supervision there, I would love for dispatch to have that telephone number so that, if there needs to be a stop at 7:30 in the morning, they know who to call to say, hey, there's work being done at 7:30 in the morning. You need to stop that for another half hour. And I don't think we're at a point where we need to have, auxiliary police there as a requirement, or need to impose a fine structure. But this is, I anticipate that this may be a project long-term that goes on for a very long period of time. And we need to ensure that we have, a ongoing relationship, because what's annoying on one Saturday becomes unbearable after a few Saturdays of not sleeping. So those are my only comments. Again, I'm very excited and positive about the project. I just want to make sure that our citizens are on board and continue to feel that way, especially the ones that are so close to it.
Thank you. Mr. Levy, Mr. Swittle, who would like to proceed at this point?
I want to say thank you again for those comments. We definitely want to be proactive about the situation. And I think one of the other things we're pretty reflective about over the past week, and some concerns we had about staging and deliveries throughout the project. And I know a lot of that kind of sequencing and logistics of the work are going to come through the site plan submission to the city, but Krill is one of the partners that will be part of our CM team for the project, and we have the benefit of having them in really before basic architectural services begin. So they're part of the team right away, and we're going to be talking about this early and often, as opposed to sometimes the design gets ahead of bringing a CM on board and working through some of the constructability issues. We definitely are at an advantage here where we have them. They've really been involved from the very beginning of the conversations that we've had about this project. So if there are no other questions about that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick, and we are going to go over the parking submission. And really what we're here to seek approval for is the closure of the Belvoir parking lot for the duration of the construction of the field house and then thereafter. In addition to that, opening up 2 additional entry points on campus to help with the traffic flow during the academic year.
Okay, very good.
Thank
Rick,
you.
welcome
I'm
back.
Rick Ortmeyer, a partner with Boswick Design Partnership, and in the interest of your time, and given that the Planning Commission vetted this in detail last week, I'll plan to make this very high level with the risk of glossing over some details, so please stop me and ask questions, but I'll keep this quick. So the first page documents current status. It essentially says that per the zoning ordinance, John Carroll is required to include just over 1,200 spaces on campus with the anticipated students and the current employee load. The existing campus parking accommodates 1,522 students, parking spaces. So with that requirement of 1,211, there is a 311 parking space surplus today on campus. On page 4 of the packet, this identifies the temporary construction condition on campus and the impact to the on-campus parking. So the parking on the north side of campus essentially stays the same. The parking outlined in what is noted as B stays the same, but losing the Belvoir lot and also with some other work anticipated losing the 60-space commuter lot. So the campus is down to 1,108 spaces. And so there is a 103 space deficit to meet the zoning ordinance. So the way the campus during the construction phase is going to accommodate that gap is a couple of ways. So again, on this map, the campus has 1,108. They are going in a lease agreement, I think, that is underway, 150 spaces from JFX. At the time that we created this presentation, it was 50 spaces at Notre Dame. I think that total is now up to 150. But for purposes of this, we're counting it at 50. So additional 200 spaces off-site nearby that allows us to have a 97 space surplus on campus with these 2 nearby off-site lots. Separate but important is with all the construction work that's happening, Severance Town Center will house 400 spaces for the contractors. Because we know contractor, in addition to necessary on-site traffic, just the workers showing up will be another imposition to the neighborhood that John Carroll is anticipating and actually investing in off-site parking for that shuttle. So really, what the request is, to reiterate what Jeremiah was mentioning, is that we're closing this Belvoir lot and that we're accommodating the parking in this way. In the future, which is this slide is here for reference, post-construction, this is not part of the approval request, this is a future state that we will necessarily come back with more detail on. There will be some parking on the site of the field house, which is noted as Site C, and there is an anticipated additional parking structure in negotiation to be built just south of Shula Stadium on the property currently owned by Belfair. So that summarizes the parking, current state and future state. And this is more specifically about the entrances and exits, which is of immediate concern to the neighbors nearby. This is current state with essentially 2 public access entrances, one along Belvoir into the Belvoir lot near the Recplex, and then one at the southwest corner of campus in front of Dolan, the main entrance. All of the other entrances around campus are limited access only, either emergency vehicles or John Carroll only. During construction, what is the request, and this is part of the request for approval tonight, the access point labeled B will be closed. The access point A will remain. So the 2 other entrances that will be opened for commuter traffic, and this was also done with the input of an experienced traffic analyst that was hired to help count and anticipate some of the traffic impact of closing this Belvoir opening. that we would have an entrance noted as C on the south side of campus and an entrance noted as D on the north side of campus, which is as far away from JZU as possible, knowing that there's a population of small pedestrians around that school that we want to avoid. There's also 2 locations that will be emergency and construction traffic only, which are notified here by the yellow arrow, one leading to Pacelli and one adjacent to the library work. A couple of notes just from the city planning and the fire and safety. There was a request to what's noted as A, have the emergency vehicle access in the pull-off adjacent to DeCarlo, which is along Belvoir in A, and that will also accommodate ADA traffic, parking. The note B refers to the driveway extension at the north drive along campus as it exits onto Washington University, or Washington Boulevard. It actually has a kind of geofabric pad that allows emergency vehicles to go. They want that to be a concrete pad. Note C refers to some stone walls that actually limit the access of emergency vehicles. If this is their only way in, they need to improve that opening so they can turn left and right to get on the campus. And then note D is specific to pedestrian traffic that will still be coming from the dormitories on the east side of Belvoir. We will just keep those existing lights and pedestrian stops in place so that students coming across the campus still have that safety feature along Belvoir. And then just again, for reference, a proposed future state would reopen an entrance along Belvoir and maintain the entrance marked A at the front door of campus, and then future discussions will get into the viability about maintaining some openings along the north and south edge of campus marked C and D, but that's for a future consideration. That was quick, some data, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wortmeyer. Are there any questions for Mr. Wortmeyer? Seeing none, thank you. And is there further presentation?
We did have the second one teed up that we showed at Planning and Zoning, which is sort of the concept for the field house and the connecting piece. We're happy to show that if City Council would like. If not, in the essence of time, this is really what we're here for today, is to get approval on the closure of the Belvoir lot and the 2 additional entry points.
Okay, very good. Anybody here want to hear the other part of the presentation that was presented at Planning Commission? I would note that the presentation itself is also now on the city website under the John Carroll University link. If not, then thank you. So we are here then on a motion to approve Planning Commission's recommendation of approval from the July 7, 2022 meeting regarding the application from John Carroll University for traffic and parking presentation for site plan approval. Just for everyone's edification and for the record, at the July 10th meeting of Planning Commission, there was a motion made by Mayor Brennan, seconded by Mrs. Urban, to recommend to City Council the approval of the closure of the South Belvoir parking lot, John Carroll University, and the approval of the proposed means of ingress and egress on campus as set forth in the presentation, together with the temporary parking lot plan contingent upon of the execution of the contracts between John Carroll University and Jewish Family Experience and Notre Dame for the 200 parking spaces between those 2 institutions. And on roll call, all members voted aye. Just for the record, we had not just quorum, but the full Planning Commission was present. All members voted aye. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation of Planning Commission? So moved. Motion by Mr. Cooney. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sachs. Any discussion on the motion?
Mayor, I just want to note a couple of things for the record.
Yes, please,
Just for
Mr.
purposes
McConville.
of clarity. One is just to note that the parking plan was submitted to the village engineer and our safety forces for review and comment prior to presentation in front of the Planning Commission. And then the next couple things I don't think are controversial, but I just want the record to be complete because we made a point of indicating to John Carroll at Planning Commission that when they come before Planning Commission and City Council with the site plan for the project, we expect to see a parking garage somewhere. Hopefully everything works out with Belfair, but if it does not, we noted that we wanted to see a parking garage on the site plan. And we indicated that it would also be helpful to see information about sequencing and staging at the time of that presentation. And then lastly, as previously indicated, we noted that a development agreement would be a contingency of site plan approval. So just to note all that for the record so that the council's record is consistent with Planning Commission's end of comment.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mr. Gould, did you have something?
I did just have a question on the parking situation. The two alternative sites, were they slated for specific parking? I'm sorry if I missed that. Who was parking at which alternative sites? Are there students being pushed out to those other locations, or?
So at Severance Town Center, where we have approximately 400 spaces, we'll be primarily parking our contractors there. And then how they get to campus, whether they're carpooling, shuttling, that's essentially on them. But, 99% of them have to park at Severance Town Center. Notre Dame College and JFX will be primarily our residential students. And those locations will be a warehouse solution for residential cars. That we know that those students aren't transient every single day, that those cars often sit there for the entire semester. So we want to get those cars off of campus for the duration of the construction project.
Okay. And Mayor, if we saw issues with, like, for instance, the construction parking, for instance, being pushed out into residential streets.
Can't hear you.
If we saw issues with the construction traffic, for instance, or parking being pushed out into residential streets rather than using this other parking, we would have options to respond at that point?
Of course.
Okay. I just
Yes.
wanted, I don't see any problem with approving. Thank you for clarifying during the question discussion area.
There, excuse me.
Yes,
Mayor.
Mr. Cooney, go ahead.
There are signs posted in the direct neighborhood of John Carroll University that limit parking to 2 hours. I believe the hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I can't,
That may
if I'm
be,
not
but
mistaken.
it's also limited to residents who have a permit.
Correct, yeah, permit only, yes, so.
Yeah.
But looking at the plan as submitted, it's obviously, there's contingency plans put in place for the, obviously, the students for access to the campus, but also for the construction as well. So, and also with obviously the safety personnel, the first responders, that they have appropriate access to the campus. Hopefully it won't be needed, along with those details. And also a consideration for Jesus School. Obviously they begin at 8 a.m. So the students should be on campus and off the streets. There are quite a few that walk, which is good. And looks like all those issues appear to have been addressed overall. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Well then, Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. The motion carries and the Planning Commission's recommendation is therefore approved. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Sweattle, Mr. Wortmeyer, and Mr. Levy for being here today and for your for your presentation, and thank you to John Carroll for their continued investment in its institution and in our community. Thank you. Next is item B, a motion to approve the Economic Development Committee motion to create the Zoning Committee, a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee. Mr. Rock is the chair of the Economic Development Committee. I will recognize him at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, the Economic Development Committee met to discuss the formalizing of the Zoning Committee. We had a very good discussion with administration and members of council, and we all came out in agreement that the work of the subcommittee, which will be known as the Zoning Committee, it'll be a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee, will comprise of members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Planning Commission, and the Architecture Review Board. There was discussion about how many members from each board, but ultimately out of that meeting we decided to just open it up to all members. Everyone would be invited as key stakeholders, and we hope that we can get as much participation as possible. That'll include members of council, so you will be drafted into this committee. There will be lots of changes. I mean, this is hundreds of zoning codes that are going to be altered in some respect. So the work of that subcommittee will be to review that in committee as opposed to seeing it for the first time in council meetings. As you know, if it came to council for the first time, we'd be debating for hours over stuff. So the work of that will be done in committee. So I thought it was a pretty fruitful conversation. It worked out really well. I'm asking today that we formalize this group and that we include you guys and the boards and committees of University Heights as stakeholders. And I look forward to getting this work started. It would be in the fall. ZoneCo is doing their deep dive right now into the zoning code to see what is currently on the books. And we'll make recommendations in those committee meetings.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Rock. I'd also add that there was some administrative representation on the committee as well. We discussed that at the committee meetings. So obviously Mrs. Drucker is the project manager here. We'd also be looking to have Mr. Engelbrecht. I plan to attend these meetings. Depending, there may be occasion to have our chiefs there and so on, so that may be a little fluid. Probably don't need everybody for everything, but there will be an administrative presence as well at the committee meetings.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Is there a motion then to approve the creation of the zoning committee as recommended by the Economic Development Committee of Council?
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Sachs. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Next is item C, discussion on the progress of the Rrs Rubbish Survey. I'll begin this by reading two emails which were sent late today. The first dated July 13, 2022 at 4:34 p.m. by Elizabeth Biggins-Raymer. Ms. Biggins-Raymer is the Executive Director of the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. The email was sent to all members of the University Heights evaluation team and reads as follows. Dear University Heights evaluation team, the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District entered into a contract with Resource Recycling System, Inc., RRS, to assist with the development, deployment, and evaluation of survey responses pertaining to the willingness of City of University Heights residents to change the current back/side door collection program to a system that may be more efficient, increase recycling participation and tonnage, and save the city money. RRS, a national leader in resource management consulting, and the district agreed to complete a survey, development, and evaluation process employing industry techniques recognized by organizations such as Solid Waste Association of North America, also known as SWANA, National Waste and Recycling Association, also known as NWRA, the Recycling Partnership, TRP, and the National Recycling Coalition, NRC. The scope of services and deliverables included in the RRS/district contract established a budget and timeframe based on the interactions to date with the City of University Heights. An amendment to the RRS/district contract is needed to remain within the committed budget and schedule. The use of the evaluation team is being discontinued. The district and RRS appreciates the time and efforts put forth by the residents, administration, and council of University Heights toward the project. Once this endeavor has been completed, a presentation will be conducted for the public, administration, and council. Sincerely, Beth Biggins Raymer. The second letter was sent to me today at 5:59 p.m. from Jeffrey Pearl. Mr. Pearl was one of my appointments, I suppose, to the evaluation team. He writes, "Dear Michael, the following is an email that I am sending to Beth and the others from the evaluation team. I would appreciate you reading this at the start of tonight's special council meeting or at whatever time you feel it most appropriate. Thanks, Jeffrey." Noting that this seems to be that time, I proceed. "Dear Beth, I had hoped that the cancellation of the evaluation team meeting was merely a postponement and that a replacement time was to be announced this week. I thought this may have been the case because of the coincidence of the older survey that council had authorized being received in the mail by many residents on July 8th, the same day that you emailed us notification that the meeting was canceled. I realize now that I was wrong. While I am disappointed that the Solid Waste District decided not to retain an evaluation team, I can understand much of the reason behind the decision. It was most unfortunate that valuable time at the Zoom meeting was taken up by council people complaints that could have been handled prior to the evaluation team meeting. I stated my opposition to this in written public comments on Zoom at the time. The possibility of this contributing to the district's decision was in the back of my mind. I feel this matter reflects poorly on University Heights. I appreciate the district's interest in helping to move University Heights ahead with improvements to solid waste management, including recycling. I remain hopeful that the county-authorized survey by RRS will be helpful to our city regardless of whether there is input from residents or not. Thanks to all for your time. Sincerely, Jeffrey Pearl." Those were the two items that I received. Mrs. Thomas, I will forward both to you for the minutes. Thank you. If there's anybody else who'd like to say anything at this time,
Yes, Mayor.
Floor is open. Mr. Rock.
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Pearl for his comments, and thank you for participating in the survey. You know, it's people like that who are citizen volunteers who serve on committees, and we've seen this year several being kicked off of committees or fired from boards and commissions. He is now one of them. So I apologize that that happened to you, Mr. Pearl, but thank you for dedicating your time to University Heights. I certainly sympathize with you. You know, I'm here to provide feedback on the progress of the RRS survey, but as you know, today the email came out that the committee has been disbanded. This is a survey sponsored by the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. Just for some background, on May 13th, 2022, Executive Director of the Solid Waste District, Ms. Elizabeth Biggins Raymer, wrote in an email that the objective of the survey is to ascertain the willingness of city residents to change the current backslash side door collection program to another system that would increase collection efficiencies, and the percentage of marketable recyclables. In that same email, she wrote that task 1 would be the formation of the evaluation team, and that team will assist the district and RRS in the creation of the survey instrument. As you may recall, after several council meetings and 2 service and utility committee meetings, the council felt that the timing of the RRS survey would overlap or compete with the City of University Heights rubbish study that actually went out to all households on Friday of last week. So if you look in your mail, it should be there by now. The RRS survey was to include an evaluation team. According to the proposal sent from RRS to the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, the role of the team was created to assist RRS, the district, and city management with important input into the development of a survey instrument. The evaluation team would meet to develop the questions for the survey via virtual meetings. There will be a meeting with the evaluation team to finalize the objective of the survey, as well as to conduct strategic planning sessions for key metrics and questions to be developed. After the initial meeting with the evaluation team and strategic planning session, the consultant will prepare an initial draft survey instrument and cover letter and present to the evaluation team for review. Revisions will be made based on the discussion to finalize the survey and cover letter. So basically what that is saying is it's the role of the committee, the evaluation team as they call it, to prepare the survey and review the draft survey once it's prepared from RRS and review the final survey, as well as be present in the strategic planning session. As you know, getting this evaluation team formalized was met with many obstacles. On May 16th, 2022, Ms. Biggins-Raymer wrote that it was assumed that the 2 members of the University Heights Council, Councilwoman Sachs and Councilman King, would be representing the interest of the council on the evaluation team. And she also wrote in that email that the district and its consultant constructed the composition of the evaluation team to ensure representation from the city's council, city's administration, and city's residents. You may also recall from committee meetings that the district would allow council to choose its council representation. But they later walked back that statement by assigning the council representation of their choosing. After much back and forth and getting our law director involved, the district finally allowed council to choose its own representation, but no more than 2 members. However, at the first evaluation team meeting, which was held on June 23rd, 2022, we were made aware that a 3rd council member, Mr. Brian King, would be on the committee acting as a citizen representative chosen by the mayor. Now, of course, there's no rule against allowing council members to temporarily strip their role of council and play the role of citizen representative, but it was certainly a sly approach. After all, we were told that the evaluation team could not be altered or expanded due to price constraints. What does that say to the citizens who genuinely wanted to get involved in this process? That their opinion does not matter because it's important that Mr. King be included? Now, I have no problem with Mr. King. And Brian, this is nothing personal. It was pretty petty. At that same first meeting, we spent the first 20 minutes debating whether Councilman King could participate in the discussion since Ms. Biggins-Raymer wrote that the current cost of the project cannot be guaranteed if there are alterations to the team or existing scope of work. There was no real work conducted in that first meeting. RRS presented a slideshow which indicated the project intent was to develop a residential survey with the evaluation team. And then we were told that a draft survey would be sent to the evaluation team before the second meeting. Now, I'd like to know, how would a draft survey be circulated before the second meeting with neither the Solid Waste District or RRS even knowing what's important to us, knowing what data we'd like to collect? None of that was discussed. So how would a survey already be presented? That's what I'd like to know. So I was taken back by this since we were told on June 16th from Aaron Olton with RRS that the second meeting would be in person for a survey discussion. But it wasn't until June 29th that RRS emailed my colleague, Councilperson Sachs, that the evaluation team was designed to be, quote, a courtesy review and provide input for the 5-minute or less residential survey that RRS is contracted to provide. So we went from, we're going to create the survey to we're just going to do a courtesy review of it. It's quite a stretch. Then on July 8th, we were notified that the Solid Waste District was canceling the July 12th meeting, which actually would have been the very first working meeting. So that was yesterday's meeting that was supposed to happen. There was no response as to why it was canceled and if it would even be rescheduled. I emailed 3 separate times asking for more clarification, only to be pushed off by Ms. Biggins-Raymer that she was too busy preparing for a board meeting. Well, I'm glad she said that because I took that as an opportunity to see what this board meeting is all about. And it turns out it was this morning. There was a board meeting for the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District with only one new agenda item, a resolution to amend the contract between RRS and the Solid Waste District for their work on the survey. It was at that meeting we learned that the amendment to the contract was to eliminate the balanced evaluation team in its entirety and for the district to peel off scope from RRS and conduct more of the survey internally. That will include the distribution of the survey to targeted residents, receiving survey results, analyzing and interpreting the data, and ultimately preparing the final report. Now, all of that scope was supposed to be completed by RRS, but the district felt that they would like to take full control of it now without any oversight of the evaluation team. We are all out of the picture. We will not see the survey be prepared, distributed, received, analyzed, and we will not see the final report until it's reported to council. No oversight. So I'd like to know why, after this council worked to balance the membership of the evaluation team so that it would be more fair, why did they decide to disband the committee? They chose the membership makeup, later allowing council to adjust that committee so it would be fair and balanced. But then after that, they removed the responsibilities of the committee. And then after that was exposed, they fully disbanded the working team altogether. Now I'm extremely troubled by this, as it's the evaluations team role, according to RRS and the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, to provide input into the development of the survey instrument, develop questions for the survey, conduct strategic planning sessions, review the draft survey, and review the final survey. By removing these volunteer committee members from the process, the district, who is a stakeholder in all of this, will produce the final survey without any oversight. Further, it will be the district, no longer RRS, who will distribute the survey to targeted residents, again, without any oversight. I'm not sure what role this will play in our city anymore. I'm troubled by this. I no longer trust the efforts of RRS/Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. I feel the process has been flawed from the get-go. It has been changed numerous times, and now they have removed the aspect of the committee which provided the oversight. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rock. Anybody else?
I do, but
Yes, Mr.
I
King.
a couple comments on that. Together, we did work to try to find balance with membership for the evaluation team. And I think that is a good thing. So it is disappointing to hear that the ability to do that, to have some participation in the survey will not be available. But I think we kind of have to take a step back a little bit as to why we are here, or how do we end up in this position. The previous council had worked with Dr. Sutton at Baldwin Wallace, who, several council members have explained, is unbiased person to create an unbiased survey. And when those questions were submitted, there were questions that were removed from that survey. And those questions that were removed were related to cost. Is that a correct assessment?
The questions that were removed related to costs, the committee felt were biased or leading questions, because if you include questions about adding a fee to residential households, which had never been discussed before, it would taint the minds of the reviewer or the surveyor, and they may change their responses.
They weren't as much related to cost as they were about the potential consequences of certain actions like raising taxes or
Right.
fees, which no one on council was
Sure.
contemplating at the time.
Understood. But essentially, as is stated, there was Dr. Sutton, who was unbiased, to create an unbiased survey. By removing those questions, one can imply that those members inferred their bias by removing it. If you're going to have somebody, a group or a person, create the survey for you in an unbiased fashion, there may be some questions that you may not agree with, but they're doing it in a way that to not influence any decision. Now, essentially, if we get to the crux of everything, the reason why council is even considering, which has been going on for years, to potentially move to a curbside pickup is because of cost. So those members that remove those questions regarding fees, or if there were to be a tax increase, inserted their own bias into that survey. Now, I personally, and I agree with other members of council, for both surveys, I encourage all residents to participate in them. I think the more data we have is good to help us make a decision. I'm sure there will be some questions. There potentially could be some questions that overlap, but I agree with you, Mr. Rock. It is disappointing that the evaluation team is not going to be a part of it. But I think we have to remember as to why we are here. And this is not because of something that's been happening over the last 6 months. It's been going on for years. And I do wish that Mrs. Sachs would find something that makes University Heights so unique, as we should keep backyard pickup because of what we do. But there are some realities that we are facing. The service director has recommended to move to curbside pickup. The city spends several $100,000s a year with outside services to maintain our roads and other items, because the good people of that service department are doing trash pickup. So I'm hoping the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District reconsiders and puts the evaluation team back together. But I do think at certain times we have to remember as to why we are having this discussion in the first place.
And if I
Thank you,
could
Mr.
respond,
Cooney. Go ahead, Mr. Rock.
You know, we can discuss that question that was removed back and forth. I can also include a question that says, you know, would you be willing to have your taxes raised or be imposed a fee to transition to curbside? Because it's an expensive endeavor. It's going to be millions of dollars spent in equipment and vehicles. That question was never considered either. But if you're going to consider the one, you got to consider both. To be unbiased, you have to be 100% fair across the board. So we didn't include, I guess, either question. But we also have to ask how we got to this point where the Solid Waste District felt that they should take full control of a survey that was supposed to be done by a national expert, as they call it, and stripping it from the national expert to do it internal without any oversight of the committee. We will never see a question on that survey until it is released to targeted residents of the city. And that's troubling. And I can't support something that I don't know what's in it, number one. We were told today that the survey would include a full accounting of cost. So for instance, if you transition to curbside, you would not need as many service workers, but the mayor has stressed that he wants to keep the service workers to do other things, so that line item would move to another line item. So there would be a full accounting of all of that. But there'd be no oversight as to what that accounting data is. We just have to trust that the solid waste district is looking at the right data. Not even RRS anymore. This is just the solid waste district taking it over. That is extremely troubling. And you have to ask yourself, why do they want to do that? Why, when someone calls them out for not being fair or for stacking the deck and making it more fair later, that they keep taking responsibility out of the committee? Why? Why is it when members speak up that they decide to completely disband the committee? What's the deal? So again, it's a question of their integrity. And until we have people who can at least review the questions before they're submitting for fairness, for clarity, and for lack of bias, I cannot support it. I will be withdrawing my support of this survey.
Mr. Rock, you have to remember that the survey you did support has already gone out.
It's gone out, right?
It has gone out. So at the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, their survey, if you choose to not support, that's one thing, but the one that you did has gone out and is in people's homes right now.
Right.
So it's a tomato issue.
But no, it was a survey that was approved by the committee and approved by this council, and money was appropriated by this council. And so,
Well, that's
hold
not
on, I'm not done.
true.
So yes, the survey went out properly. And now I agree, I think that this survey that the Solid Waste District is preparing is not a survey. I think it's propaganda, because they're going to include a lot of things in there about cost and recycling without being fully vetted by citizen volunteers who have no skin in the game. Now, the district does, and they're a key stakeholder, and now they're full control of this. Okay? So I have a lot of angst against that. And they will be analyzing, reviewing the data, and submitting the report. Now, if you want to compare apples to apples, that'd be like me saying to Dr. Sutton, send me the results, I'll decide what goes in the report. But I'm not going to do that, because I don't believe in that. I believe in fair systems. I've been very vocal about this being a fair system, and it is not. And I question the legitimacy of it now.
Mayor? I think there's some clarification that needs to be made for the record. First of all, RRS is still the consultant here doing the analysis and is still doing the role that they were hired to do by the Solid Waste District. The Solid Waste District has not taken from RRS responsibilities that RRS was going to do. They're still, as it's been represented to me by the Solid Waste District, that RRS is still doing those things. The only thing that's been changed in the change order is the elimination of the committee. Now, there was something that Mr. Brock brought up that I think needs to be clarified for the record with regard to appropriation by the council. City Council did appropriate $10,000 to be transferred to the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation for the purposes of this survey. I vetoed that transfer, and this council never took it up on an override. That veto stands. Instead, the 3 members of council who are on the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation board, together with the resident member, the 4 of them, by a 4-3 vote, appropriated money that already existed in the coffers of the University Heights City Beautiful Corporation, money that was transferred for economic development, housing rehabs, and used that money to pay for this survey. It's a sidestepping of the city's charter. It is a misappropriation of that money. I believe it's going to create an audit issue, because not only is it an audit issue for the CIC, but a city credit card was used to then pay for postage. And the city is not the CIC is not the city, the CIC is a separate legal entity. If you can use the CIC to sidestep the city charter and create a shadow administration where you do things that where other members of the CIC, other than the mayor, are entering contracts, then the city's credit card should not be used. You cannot have it both ways. And I believe we're going to have an audit issue over this. I believe the state auditor is not going to look favorably on this. And I think it's also worthy of mention that the state auditor has taken a dim view of political surveys, that the state auditor made the Cleveland Heights, University Heights School District pay back money to the taxpayers for a survey that was inappropriate, much like this survey. So I do think that we're going to have some problems here going forward with regard to how the money was spent. And I don't think it's appropriate, and certainly I felt it was appropriate to clarify for the record, that when any member of this council says that money was appropriated by the council for the survey, that wasn't the money that was used. That money was vetoed. The veto was never overridden, and other money that was intended for other community development purposes was then applied to this survey by a 4-3 vote of the CIC.
So allow me to correct you because you got misinformation today from Ms. Biggins-Raymer. I was in the meeting, and so was my colleague, Ms. Sachs.
And I understand you recorded it. So
and I recorded it, and you
Okay.
can hear for yourself, if you'd like, that RRS will not be doing the analysis. They will not be receiving the results. According to the testimony that I heard today, you may have been told something different. We have all been told something different by Ms. Biggins-Raymer several times. So I'm sorry you were given misinformation. I'm happy to share the recording with you. And as for that not being considered a political survey, the point of me wanting to balance the evaluation team was so that the survey would not be politicized. It would not be political. It would be fair and balanced. But now that the committee has been removed, it will be politicized. It already is, from what I've heard in today's discussion.
It was politicized, Mr. Rock, when you and Mrs. Sachs carried on for half an hour during the evaluation team meeting about the supposed unfairness of the fact that I used one of my 2 appointments to reinstate Mr. King as a member of the committee. It was, you've asked repeatedly if, that you would like to know why. You would like to know why the change. I know why the change. I've been reticent to bring it up here in this meeting, why the change. But there are several reasons. And one is that is because of the incorrigible way that you and Mrs. Sachs carried on during this meeting, that all the emails and all the demands and all the things that were brought were taking up an exorbitant amount of the consultant's time for which they had to bill, that this was causing them to go over budget, that we were already over time on this because it took a month to get the council to make appointments. The original meeting was supposed to happen in the second half of May. And here we are in July, not yet having had the second meeting. And then finally, you say it's a matter of integrity. There is an integrity issue here. One of the things that the Solid Waste District took grave exception to were the ongoing violations of the Sunshine Law that happened with regard to discussions where all members of council were involved in emails on CCs. These are things that Mr. McConville has told you not to do, that I have told you not to do. This council does it in the budget process. It was doing it here. The Solid Waste District did not want to be a party to the ongoing violations of the Sunshine Law by members of this council. They were told that various members of council and residents were being brought to the next meeting. They did not want to host a meeting at their offices that would violate the Sunshine Law. And as a result of all of these things, they have changed the contract. So you want to know why? That's why. And here we are. I find it regrettable that people, I am talking here now, Mr. Rock. I find it here regrettable that there were people that were appointed to this committee, people who were invited to be on this committee who will not now get the opportunity to participate because of actions of this council again. So my regrets to Mr. Neil Gould, to Ms. Irene Schwartz, of course to Mr. King, and to Jeffrey Pearl, who don't get to have this input now.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
Thank you. I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning of the comments regarding the removals and perhaps insertion of bias. I wanted to clarify that the...
Speak up, please.
Sure, I'll bring the microphone a little bit closer. The removal of questions was done during the final analysis with Dr. Sutton. There was a process by which the various members who participated in the survey design met to submit things that they'd like to hear. And based on those submissions, there was a draft of the survey that was prepared that had certain questions on it. Dr. Sutton then at this final meeting gave his opinions and some analysis on what the effects of certain questions might be to a reader. This was not, he didn't see it, I think, as his role to completely create his own questions regarding these. He did try to form our questions into the most unbiased form. But when he heard from the various members of council that were present at that meeting that there was no intention to raise taxes, there was no intention to issue some type of fee, he then understood and shared that he felt that in the inclusion of that information might unfairly bias individuals who were reading that into thinking that their decisions around that would cause them perhaps be to their financial detriment if they made those decisions. So this was not an unbiased, fully formed survey that then council slashed certain items from. I've been clear about what questions were removed and what they were. Those are posted on the city's website under the minutes, as is the meeting where they were removed. And so I just wanted to respond to that so that it was a little bit more context since I was the chair of that meeting. I wanted to move to something the mayor said, which I believe is false and has already been addressed by the law director, and I'll turn to the law director in a moment. That was specifically regarding the political survey and whether or not University Heights survey is in fact a political survey like the survey that was done by the Cleveland Heights University Heights School District. So I think it's really important when we're having these types of conversations that certainly we all have our political opinions and the mayor is free to have his, but we should provide the full context of the legality and the analysis that our legal experts provide us so as not to scare anybody into thinking that something is afoot when in fact we all know very well that there's already been an analysis and an opinion by our law director that that's not true. In May of 2020, during the meeting that I was just discussing, May of 2019, during the meeting that I was just discussing to redo this survey, there was an issue that came up regarding the Cleveland Heights University Heights City School survey that went out regarding their bond issue. The person that we have hired to do our survey design and analysis, Dr. Tom Sutton, was actually quoted inside of that article and provided expert, analysis on his view about whether or not, the role of political surveys and other things that were inside of that. The mayor raised this as an issue. It went to the law department for analysis, and Mr. McConville, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind if I asked Mr. McConville to share his opinion on that. If you could please summarize your opinion regarding the political nature of the survey that the city, or the political nature of the survey that the school board put out, and your analysis on the differences or similarities to our own.
Yeah, well, I opined principally on two things. One is that the issuance of the survey by the CIC was within the CIC's powers and was an appropriate manner of communicating information and gathering information from residents on an issue of local concern. And the second thing that I spent time on in that opinion, as I recall, is distinguishing the kind of survey that was embodied by Cleveland Heights and that is forbidden, which is a survey that is or could affect the outcome of a ballot issue or some electoral issue. So we do not have a ballot issue. This issue has not been put to voters. There's no pending legislation. There's not even contemplated legislation that's been brought to my attention on that issue. So it's distinguishable on those grounds, and those are significant grounds.
And at the time that I was holding the meeting and had this scheduled with Dr. Sutton, there was a question about whether or not that meeting was even appropriate to go forward, and you opined that it was.
Correct.
Furthermore, at the CIC meeting, I do sit on that body, you had provided some opinion regarding the appropriateness of the CIC sending out the survey and the CIC spending money on the survey. You discussed a little bit about that prior, or just now, but could you mention the portions on the CIC spending its money and your analysis about it being a nonprofit organization within the state of Ohio's legal structure, holding all of the powers therein?
Yes, and again, it's a matter of the board being able to control the expenditure of its funds. So those funds were provided to the CIC for the CIC to make decision on how to spend the monies, and then the CIC walked through its proper governance process of having the issue on a meeting agenda and taking a vote.
Thank you. In conclusion, I wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting, the decision that was had by the Solid Waste District. I think it's important when we're being transparent that you do what it is that you're saying, or that your intention is, that your actions match your intent. And I really felt that there was a disconnection with this process from the beginning, where we were attempting to pretend like there was a transparency, where there was real input, where there was going to be a body where everyone got to give a say and form what the Solid Waste District was doing, and that's just not the case. I mean, we all know that. We know that, Councilperson Sachs, said, ask questions about the form of the survey. Hey, I see here that there are 3 options for the method that this is sent out, either by mail only, by online only, or by mail and online as a hybrid. Can we have a discussion about that? No, we can't, was the response. And when the question of asked why, it was, well, because it's our money and we're paying for the survey. The initial response when it came to who was going to be on council or on this evaluation team, council was told it would have its representatives and appoint citizen representatives, and the mayor was going to have his representatives, and the mayor got to pick who his representatives were, and the Solid Waste District assigned our representatives. And Councilman Rock has gone over the rigmarole that went on with trying to get, council-appointed representation on there. And then as I'm hearing from the colleagues from council who went through this process and what's been put on the record today, I don't understand how there would be a survey, design and questions that would have a courtesy review. That doesn't sound like, real input from an evaluation team. So I really, but with all that said, I don't think the removal of the evaluation team really changes what was going on. This is simply the Solid Waste District wanting to, provide this service and to get certain data and to influence the decision of this council. If there's any doubt on, the feeling of that body and its intention, you turn to Sunny Simon's comments that she's frustrated. She sees the process that we've gone through as delay after delay after delay. She says we are behind the times and we are behind the 8 ball. And there certainly is discussion to be had about the timeliness of our decisions and how speedy they are made. When I, see, whereas others might see delay, as County Councilperson Simon does, I see deliberative process. I see public hearings. I see inclusion of our citizens. I see collaboration. And I see a council who is at the end of the day going to have to make a very difficult decision and wants to ensure that they have received the input that they feel is necessary in order to make that decision. At the end of the day, the Solid Waste District survey is not going to be the thing that makes or breaks our decision. I do not think that we need to invest energy or time into fretting about whatever their process is or whatever their data is going to be. My goodness, we can make a decision independent of ever hearing from them. We don't even have to invite them to any of our meetings or have them speak if they are. And so I just don't think that it is a major issue if we are dissatisfied with the process that they have gone through, if we do not believe that it is fair and imbalanced, if we do not find that the data will be helpful to our decision, then we don't have to hear it, we don't have to consider it, and we don't have to, change our decisions based upon it. We have been clear that there are answers to certain questions that we need in order to bring this to a conclusion. It has been delayed for a long period of time, waiting for those questions to be answered. The survey is in the hands of our citizens. We have, we've received hundreds of responses thus far from citizens in the less than a week that the survey has been in their hands. They are responding by paper, they are responding online, they are excited to have the opportunity to do so, and I am excited to hear from them. I hope once we have that data and it is analyzed by Dr. Tom Sutton that we will bring this to a swift conclusion and make the hard decisions that we have been elected to make. There should be no more delays. There shouldn't be an extended process. We should consider the data that we have, consider the recommendations of the administration, consider the solid waste study that we have, and then the survey that is coming back. Those chairs are tricky, Mayor. It does it to me all the time. And finally make a decision. So those are my comments on that. I appreciate the work that each of you has done, on this process. I am grateful that at least 3 of the members of that evaluation team, 4 of the members of the evaluation team sit around this council, and we will still be able to have their input on the work that we do. And I know that the mayor will continue to be a vocal advocate for the change that he sees is appropriate for the city, including increasing recycling and changing to a curbside system that he feels will reduce costs. I know that I will continue to analyze those claims against the data that we have before us. And I'm confident at the end of the day, we will be able to make the right decision for our citizens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Is there anything else anybody would like to say? Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. This is not in any particular order. Okay, first I have a quick question before my comments. Was the University Heights survey sent to all households?
Yes, all of the households who receive solid waste services from us. So, for instance, individuals who don't receive those, like apartment complexes, did not receive the survey. It was sent to approximately 4,200 households. There were some addresses that for whatever reason were rejected by the Postal Service. If any citizen did not receive it, they can reach out either by social media, by email, or give me a call. There are some extras, paper surveys, or they can go to online on the social media platforms. And that was one of the recommendations by Dr. Sutton, was that if we could get that put onto the city's website or onto the social media platforms for the city, that would also help with the response rates.
That was my next question, if that could be, if the online link could be included in the Friday wrap-up or on the website. It's a city ordained survey.
I have no intention of doing that.
Okay, that's on the record.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Cooney.
Yes.
So a couple of things in response. It's already like history. So regarding the fairness, the unbiased, the intent of this solid waste study, a solid waste district survey, if it's going to targeted households, we have no idea how many, who, what that's based on. That right there is a concern. Perhaps if the evaluation team were functioning, that would be revealed. So that right there is interesting and problematic, number one. Number two, regarding the costs, I couldn't agree with you more. I am trying to get my arms around and get to the bottom of what are the costs? What are the costs continuing the way we're doing it versus transitioning to curbside versus different models of recycling? And at every turn, I have been ignored, whether it's discussion, whether it's email. The mayor publicly said that he and Mr. Pokorny have received the same emails all of you have and have deliberately ignored them. So that's interesting that we would give that to a third party before even having an understanding ourselves. And I think it was a meeting you might not have been in attendance, where I actually printed them out and passed them around to everybody and handed them for public record. You've also been included on the email, so if there were any questions perhaps that I was asking that didn't make sense, or you might want to tag on, it was deafeningly silent, okay? So we've had this opportunity and you're on my committee too. You're on the Service and Utilities Committee. So it would have been behooving us, and in the interest of time, to the mayor's point, to already understand what it is. There shouldn't be surprises. It shouldn't be it should be, what is it? It's finite data, or at least some sort of range, okay? So that, and according to the 2020 solid waste study, which is over 2 years old, most of the savings would be by eliminating labor. Well, we've said many times, and I think we're in agreement, at least at this point, not to eliminate labor. It would be transitioned to something else. And I understand you're talking about, well, the labor's there, but perhaps we're spending more in contracted services. Again, I would like more information about what that is and what types of services we can tell our residents and our neighbors that would be switched, transitioned if they have to drag their trash down to the curbside 52 times a year. What are they getting in return exactly? And I've kind of gone, well, hanging flowers or cleaning parks. I really wanted a list, and that never materialized. Okay. Now the mayor. As far as delays, no, actually I want to say one other thing first. I never make a move, and it seems like this council never makes a move without first checking with Mr. McConville the legality or lack thereof of any of our actions. That's the last thing we'd want to do, and I could speak for myself, to violate the sunshine laws. I've been accused from you of violating the sunshine laws from even before I became elected. And I circled back to Ms. Yes, because I sent a question to council, not understanding this, and you told me you would not respond to me even then because I was violating the sunshine laws. I circled back to Mr. McConville back then, up till this very day, and I'm proud to say that we have not violated the sunshine laws. I'll even ask Mr. McConville, based on the mayor's comments this evening, have we violated them?
I cannot comment on that.
Okay. We'll talk another time. But at least I know I ask. Second thing, as far as delays that RRS, the solid waste study, I keep saying that, district, blaming this or you saying that that's the reason. I know that I have sent emails that has not contributed to a delay. My emails, and you were part of that, was asking, what's the agenda? When is the next meeting? Who's on the committee? None of those things take time, and yet they're all ignored. Perhaps what takes time is continuing to open those emails, because after a week passes and 2 weeks and 3 weeks, I'll resend the same email. So, and Mr. Rock, the same thing. So that is not a delay in time. I will say, though, that the survey, University Heights survey that just went out, because, and I don't know how to say this so well, you were saying that we're sidestepping the process and delaying and all of that type of thing, having behaviors about it. I believe that this could have been sent out over a year ago, but you have been politically positioning yourself with this and the city. It seems to me to be obstructionist, There's been constant disinformation, including this evening, which was pointed out. And that's what's been delaying this process significantly, not the evaluation team. Been trying to be cooperative, been trying to extend my hand, and been turned away at every turn. So that's the kind of thing that delays the process. When there's a fear of engaging in debate, answering questions, trying to resolve issues together. I think that's it for now. Thank you very much. Oh, no, there is one more thing. So I was at the meeting today, and it was a public meeting, and the comments were, I believe, in line. The one thing that was objected was by the chair, who is Sunny Simon, that we not ask questions. And for some reason, which was fine, that's fine. If that's the rule, that's fine. But the only temper that rose was her own. There really was polite attempt to just ask the question why, or what, or just make a case as to why we were there. The only reason we went is because, and I clearly stated this, is because we had this on our agenda tonight. We had asked for, Councilman Rock had asked for information that we could present as partners, and because there were no responses after, 3 times? We just went to find out, well, what can we report? And that was pretty shocking, that the evaluation team would be disbanded. I too want to thank Mr. Pearl, Ms. Schwartz, Mr. Gould, for being residents willing to participate in the process. I hope this does not discourage them from future participation. I am a firm believer, as I've said many times, that all voices should be heard. I don't have to be right, and I don't have to be the loudest voice, but I do want to hear so that I can get to the best decision for the taxpayers and for this city. And now I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Is there anybody else who'd care to comment at this time? I'd simply like to point out, with respect to the Solid Waste District's public meeting, that they do have a public comment period. And like our own public comment period, it's not a Q&A with the public. And frequently we have residents who will come to our public comment period and they will ask questions. And generally we don't answer those questions. It's not intended to be a back and forth here, and it's not intended to be a back and forth there. And my understanding from Councilwoman Simon was that she was simply trying to take control of the meeting when there was constant effort to create a back and forth during what is merely a public comment period. I wish to clarify also that the reason why the city social media and the city newsletter will not be publishing this survey link or information of this survey on city social media and city media is because it's not a city document. It's not a city survey. It is the CIC survey, which is a separate legal entity. CIC is free to promote it as they've been. CIC has spent money to do that, money that was intended for other things, I think, when that money was transferred to the CIC. But all the same, it is not the City of University Heights survey. It is the CIC's survey. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you again, Mayor. So whether it's a survey or something else belongs to that entity only if they pay for it, not if they've worked on it? Because they did not work on it. I understand it went through extreme due diligence here in City Council for the city, by the city. It's the city's survey. So we can agree to disagree perhaps, but the only thing that happened in CIC was to use those funds. Okay, the second thing is regarding today, there was a public comment period and it was supposed to be at the end. And we were willing to wait until the end, but were invited to comment. And the minute that Ms. Simon discouraged the questions, they stopped, but Mr. Deaver asked us questions. So we responded. So you're being given secondhand information, and it makes me all the more appreciative of attendance at public meetings, to hear things firsthand. And pretty much any time, you really want to get the true information. So thank you for reinforcing that for me.
Well, I'm looking forward to reinforcing the fact that the public's business is to be done in the public. I would encourage anybody who's interested in the Sunshine Law violations to go ahead and make a public records request for all the emails, CCing all members of council, discussing public business on this subject and a plethora of others. I know the media is here, and I suspect we'll be seeing more about this for some time to come. I know that quite often that when these things come out, that the mayor gets blamed equally with the council. We all get painted with the same broad brush. I have admonished the council over and again, as Mr. McConville has advised over and again, that the public business is to be discussed in public, that you can't have a quorum of council discussing public business. We have email after email over the course of a year plus where this has gone on. It's gone on with regard to this survey. It has gone on with regard to the budget processes these last 2 years. It has gone on with regard to numerous other subjects that I probably don't even know about. But I do know about some of them. I know the violations are there. Whenever I don't engage in those conversations, I usually get labeled as, oh, the mayor's not going to give us answers. The mayor didn't answer my question. Well, I'm not answering questions with regard to public business that should be discussed publicly by email. I do not want to be participating in the ongoing Sunshine Law violations that this council partakes in. I don't blame the Solid Waste District in the least for not wanting to take part in it, and I don't want to take part in it. I don't like it. You've been told over and over again, we're here again. I mean, even in your discussions, you're talking about how, you emailed everybody and you asked about this. That's exactly the kind of thing that's wrong. Just like the round robin discussions that the vice mayor participated in as chair of the finance committee, where she would break up into separate groups to talk about the budget. That's illegal. Not supposed to do that. Admitted to the illegal conduct on the record after claiming it wasn't a Sunshine Law violation. This is the sort of thing that shouldn't be happening in this city. Now, to most people who aren't paying close attention, when they write on Cleveland.com about how there's Sunshine Law violations in the city of University Heights, they're going to assume that we're all responsible for it. And though we're not all responsible for it, I'm going to do the best I can to explain the situation from the administration's point of view. When it comes also then to answering certain questions, all of us are here to represent the people of the city. All of us here work for the people of the city, but the mayor doesn't work for the city council any more than the city council works for the mayor. So when you send us 40 questions about a bunch of stuff that you want us to research when we're trying to run a city, we're under no obligation to drop everything we're doing and answer those questions for you. We are here to serve the people of this community. We're here to put people first. When you ask us a bunch of bogus questions about things that are not relevant to what we're working on right now, no, we're not going to take the time to answer those questions. And there may be a time when some of those questions are relevant, some of those questions may be pertinent, but we're not going to drop everything we're doing to do that. At the time that those questions were presented to Mr. Picorni and myself, we're trying to open the park, we're trying to organize a parade, we're trying to get the pool open, we're trying to organize things for the summer, and we get 40 questions, basically interrogatories, asking for narrative responses about all kinds of things regarding solid waste and pickup and things that the administration is not even I'm talking here. Please don't laugh at me. And things
please don't malign me.
No, please. I have the floor here. Will you please be respectful of that? Thank you. So when we have these kinds of questions, when we have these and they're obviously posed in bad faith, we're not taking the time to do that. There are other ways of putting it, but I'll just leave it at that for
You
now.
can put it how you want, please. Get it off your chest.
You accused us of breaking the law, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's a serious allegation.
Mayor?
Yes.
I appreciate the position that you've taken regarding sunshine law violations and when everyone is CC'd on an email, that being a violation of the sunshine laws. I don't believe that that's consistent with the advice that I've received from Mr. McConville. Neither do I believe that I've ever received advice from Mr. McConville that an individual could not respond to the council member posing the question without there being a sunshine law violation. I furthermore don't understand how your position that CCing every member of council is a sunshine law violation is consistent with the email address that the administration caused to be placed on the city's website, which CCs every member of council as well as the administration. If in fact emails that are sent to every member of council and are a violation of the sunshine laws, that would seem inconsistent to me. But I haven't heard that from the law director, so I don't accuse you of being in violation or causing violations by placing that email address there, because I haven't heard from the law director that emails that are CC'd to others, are violations. I do understand that there, when you have discussions that are had by email, that there can be concerns, and I know that the law director has opined on that as well. If there are specific instances that need to be corrected, I'm sure that members of council will do that. But I don't think that anything that has occurred prevents responses to questions. And I think that, again, when you're dissatisfied with something, you don't like it, and you characterize it as a sunshine law violation, it's really just shrouding the underlying concern, which is that you thought the questions were a bunch of bogus questions and didn't want to answer them. And that's why you didn't do it. And that seems more likely to me than there actually being a violation, because with as many times as you have raised this issue and made that allegation against members of council, I am certain that if there was a violation, that our law director would have advised us as such. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify, an email that CCs all member of council in and of itself is not a sunshine law violation. An email to all of council saying, hey, here's the notice for the public meeting coming up, that is not a sunshine law violation. What's a violation is when you have an ongoing back and forth discussion happening via email that isn't out in the public, that isn't out at a publicly noticed meeting. The procedural points of a message to all members of council about a meeting is not a sunshine law violation. A concerned citizen who sends a message to all members of council, that is not a sunshine law violation. The violation is the back and forth going on and on about matters of the public interest, of public business. The people's business is to be done in public. That serves the people, also happens to be the law. That is the problem. The creation of an email button on the city website that allows a resident to email all of council and the mayor is not a sunshine law violation unless that becomes a group discussion that is something that would be more appropriately held at a public meeting. If that group discussion ensues, that may be a sunshine law violation. But allowing our residents to reach out to us is not a sunshine law violation. And I think Mr. McConville can clarify further if you feel the need to do so at this time.
I've given advice on sunshine law issues many times. I'm happy to provide advice on that. I prefer to do so privately. Many of you have gone through orientation processes with me where we talk about sunshine law issues at length. I've responded to private emails on sunshine law issues with most of you. and address sunshine law issues over time. But I don't really want to comment at this meeting further about that. I note that the agenda item is a discussion on the solid waste survey, and that we've gone far afield from that topic.
So I would just like to point out that since you accused me of breaking sunshine laws because of my emails to this council, I am not aware of a single email to this council that had a back and forth discussion
Exactly.
with regard to the survey. There was an email that went out, and you said members of the media are here. They have that email already. I've already sent it. So there was no back and forth discussion. It was an email stating, I plan on telling the membership of council that the evaluation team has been disbanded, period. And I have concern over that. I will address it tonight. And that was it. I'm sorry you don't like that. But if you're trying to distract the people from understanding what's really happening with the survey, why they're peeling it away from a national expert, why they are taking citizen volunteers out of the equation that provide oversight, and painting council as this like law-breaking body, you're distracting people away from what's really happening. That you're trying to dismantle backyard pickup and influencing people's minds through a propaganda survey paid for by the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District without any oversight.
The only propaganda survey is the one that the CIC unfortunately had to fund. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. I will always take responsibility for my actions. Let's just get that straight. So if I've had any indiscretion, I would like to know somehow. Please let Mr. McConville know so he can tell me, and I will be glad to learn and take whatever happens because of that. But there is no back and forth. And two things about my emails in question. Number one, I've submitted them for the public record. So they're on the public record because there is no back and forth because you have made it clear you're not responding to my emails or my questions or calls or any communications. So I'm not really sure how that works when I'm supposed to be an effective chair of the Service and Utilities Committee under which this rubbish situation falls. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I agree. You're not an effective chair of that committee.
Sorry?
Is there anybody
I
else?
didn't hear you. Please repeat what you said.
I said, I agree, you're not an effective chair of the Service and Utilities Committee.
Oh, my
Mr.
goodness.
Cooney, go ahead.
I'm glad that's on the public record.
Unless there's a continuing discussion about the progress of the Rrs Rubber Survey, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Very good. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Cooney. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gould. Any further discussion? I don't think it needs discussion. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Before we go, for those of you who celebrate, happy Amazon Prime Day.